Hello, I am Jan Oberg. I'm the co-founder and director of the Transnational Foundation for Peace and Future Research in Sweden. A very unusual little outfit because we have no corporate money and no government funding, and we are totally people financed, which gives us the freedom to do free research and public education work. And I want to express my gratitude for being given the opportunity to speak about human rights at a 75th anniversary of the UN Declaration. As happy as I am to do that, as sad I am to do it while the worst immoral, illegal, and barbaric genocide in the Western world goes on at the moment for 2 months with full Western support in Gaza. It paints a background picture to the discussions we're having about human rights. But let me move on to what I want to say. I used jokingly to say that the only problems I have with the idea of human rights are the two words human and right. The reason is the following. First of all, while humans have rights, so have also non-human organisms such as waters, rivers, woods, and future generations who don't live yet. But it's a very anthropocentric idea that human beings are in the middle of everything and then the rest has no rights. The other problem I have is with the word right. And the simple quotation I want to make is that of Gandhi, who always maintained that there are no rights without duties. The Western world and this concept has put far too much emphasis on everybody's right to demand this and that, and not discussing what are the responsibilities we have vis-a-vis each other, vis-a-vis the globe, and vis-a-vis the bigger creation, if you will. So there are some deficiencies here that we have to talk about. There are a number of problems that surround the concept of human rights. First of all, I doubt that it is reasonable to believe that you can put up a set of rights that are universal in terms of values, in terms of implementation. We have to take into account that there are different cultures, different histories, different narratives, different values throughout the world. And that what was put together in this declaration is very useful, very valid, but it's not necessarily satisfactory for everyone. The same applies to the implementation. It's very easy for the Western world to say about other countries that they are not serious about human rights or they are violating human rights. But whose rights is it? There's a right for other peoples to interpret the implementation of human rights in different ways. I would also say it's a problem that there is a kind of bias in the direction of individualism, of Western thinking. That which has rights are individuals. And as I hinted a moment ago, there are others who have rights. But I'll come back to that. A third problem has to do with the very cynical concept, paradoxically you may say, of the idea of the right to protect and humanitarian intervention. Because they have consistently, as concepts since the Yugoslav wars where they were introduced, had the effect of serving geopolitical purposes and Western imperial motives and militarism much more than saving human lives or human rights. Should we have taken that concept serious about intervening to save lives, We should have done it in a number of other conflicts than where it has actually been done. But cynically, you can say that we start wars for the very nice, noble purpose of saving human lives and human rights. There is no such cases. They have always been geopolitically motivated. Another problem is what I would call the human rights industry, that and the politicization of human rights. You use the human rights argument to tell other countries what to do, and if they don't, they will be punished. This type of human rights can be used whenever it suits us. And of course, the blatant example right now while I speak is the lack of focus on the human rights of the Palestinian people, as has been the case for decades, but is coming to its peak point during this genocide. Whereas everybody would condemn what happened in Bosnia, in Srebrenica, etc., in the Western world. So it's the politicization instead of the serious struggle for human rights that we see in the West, and therefore it has less and less credibility. There is also the problem that we are beginning to see or have seen organizations which used to be non-governmental becoming near-governmental in the field of human rights. I think there are ample examples of human rights organizations that, for instance, take over a leader from a government position or minister position and therefore begin to sound like and legitimate the policies of that particular country's human rights policies. And finally, as an example of problems, it seems to me that there is still a fundamental problem in the emphasis the West has given to political and civil rights, whereas other countries, for very good reasons, have given emphasis more to economic rights, such as employment. Now, that has, of course, to do with the fact that the Western principle of, if you will, capitalism is not very promoting of human rights. So you talk about the right to meet instead, or to speak freely, etc. By the way, the West is now trampling very hard on its own fine principles about political openness, diversity, pluralism in the media, everybody can get to speak, etc. The narratives and the public relation for warfare going on has undermined that years ago. Now, having said these things, and I don't think we should always focus mostly on problems, we should also look into what is needed for the future. And I would advocate a new global ethics of care and responsibility to support human rights struggles in the future. Now, we have, for instance, the Christian 10 Commandments, which is basically a neighborhood ethics. That is totally irrelevant today because everything we do, even our local society, is somehow connected to the world community. So the main thing will be to think of how can we act, governments and individuals and organizations, how can we act in such a way that would preserve the permanence of humanity and creation, if you will, in the future, in the indefinite future? How can we be sure we don't take steps that would impair the possibilities and the opportunities for future generations? That would be a global ethics of care and responsibility, and we are back to the question of duties and not only rights. I'm here leaning quite a lot on a philosopher whose name is Hans Jonas, and also glad to say that there's something called the Earth Charter, and there's something called the People's Charter for a Non-Violent World. There are new ways of thinking holistically about all of us and human beings in the bigger picture, and not just elevating human beings pyramidically and let everybody else and everything else come later. So we have to think globally because we are so powerful technologically. We can fly around, we can do a nuclear war on the other side of the globe, etc. And what Hans Jonas is telling us is, because you have power, more technological power than ever, we have to be humble. We have to be careful. We have to be utterly responsible. Now, that is the philosopher's viewpoint. If we look at the world, we've gone the opposite direction the last years or decades, because there's no sense of ethics influencing political decision-making. There is no sense of long-term thinking in the Western world anymore that asks, what will this mean on the time perspective of several generations ahead? The last few months or years have been panic decisions. It's been decision-making without any analysis of consequences. It's been, we do these things and we leave it to the future generations to clear up the mess. But that does not mean that we should not talk about theories, concepts, ways of thinking, because it's ways of thinking that moves people, even though we are increasingly in the Western world living in what I call kakistocracy. And kakistocracy means decision-making in the hands of the most incompetent and least good people. And those are the ones who run racism, imperialism, and militarism. So what would such an ethics of care and responsibility contain? I would say suggest three things, but it's only up for discussion. It's not, something that is fixed, but dialogue is important. That's why we do these meetings. And the first would be, the norm would be care for permanence of existence and present lives. The slogan for that would be, as I mentioned, be humble, be careful, take care, think long term. Because if you don't think long term, you will endanger the permanence of human life and the life of nature, of creation. The second norm, or set of norms, would be care for biodiversity. And the slogan here would be abstain. Even if you can do something, civilization is about deciding not to do something you can do because it's wrong. So abstain from cutting down the rainforests. Abstain from warfare that destroys nature and human beings. Appreciate what is, anything from the beautiful flower you can see in your garden to the whole system, the rich world in which we still live, if we want to. And then preserve, 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 preserve. That's a way of thinking about biodiversity instead of eradicating species on an assembly line basis. We do it because we're not creative enough and because we don't think long term. And we don't think of non-humans or non-human rights and our duties. Now, third, and that's a difficult one, care for the yet unborn. That means it is not enough to look at those who live right now. We've got to think of those who are not yet born, but have to take over the earth after us. Now, here we run into something which Westerners cannot understand, because the West is a contractual society. It is basically saying, if you do something for me, I do something for you. I pay you a price, you give me a commodity. Here we are saying, we've got to do something for future generations who don't do anything for us. I mean, it's meaningless sentence or question to ask, what has the future generations, the yet unborn, ever done for me? And why should I do something for them? Here, civilization is about doing something good for those who are not yet here, but whom we know will be here unless we blow up the whole thing. And so we need to think non-contractually and do good because there is somebody coming after us. And that is not our right. It's their right that we have a duty to care for in a global ethics of care and responsibility. Now, the slogan for that third bit will be empathize. Live yourself into the situation of those coming after us. And it's the word love. Love those who are not yet here as you love yourself and your own children or grandchildren. But it's non-contractual. They cannot do anything for you, but you can feel good because you've done something for them. So these are some of my proposals and ways of thinking about how to innovate constantly the idea of human rights. Humanity has rights, but so has other non-human species and creatures. And we do have rights, but we also have obligations, duties, like a family. And it is that family feeling that other cultures outside the West have, but we don't seem to have. We're becoming more and more egoistic. And then to realize a vision, something positive, we need to think of reducing violence in all its forms and shapes. Violence against other human beings, other cultures, genders, nature. That means no to racism, no to ethnic cleansing, no to genocide, of course, no to imperialism, and no particularly to militarism. Now, if we could elevate ourselves over time to a little bit higher level of civilization, we can certainly save this globe. And we can use the human right concept in an extended, visionary, long-range form. But if we keep on doing what we do now, our opportunities will be more and more limited. I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it can stimulate a little discussion with those who have listened so far. Thank you very much.